Do you ever look at the clock and realize you're running, 8 minutes behind schedule, and your ADHD brain suddenly jumps to, ugh, I'm already so off track. This whole day is going to be a disaster. On the one hand, we intellectually know it's just 8 minutes. But at the same time, those 8 minutes seem like such a big deal. One late start and the brain suddenly slips into, why do I even bother trying to schedule or make a plan? It's not like I stick to it anyway. If this sounds familiar, please know you're in the right place, because today on episode 311 of the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast, we are talking about all or nothing thinking, why it shows up so strongly when we're trying to follow a plan, and how one tiny shift can help us start fresh at any moment. Let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. How are you? As you heard in the intro, today we are talking about all or nothing thinking, and in particular, how this shows up around planning and schedules and following said schedules. And I want to start actually with a quick story. And it's one that used to happen to me many more times than I'd care to think about when I was still working in academia. So I liked to get to the university early when I was teaching. And it was usually sometime around 7:30 or 8. It was the time of the day when the building was still quiet. And by getting there early, it allowed me to kind of get settled and start the day with this schedule that I'd carefully planned out the night before or whatever. Now, if you have ever driven east on the Mass Pike toward Boston during morning rush hour, you know how unpredictable that can be, okay? So on more than one occasion, I would hit traffic and roll in a little bit later. And because of that, I wouldn't get started until 8:08 or 8:15 or 8:30 or whatever. And my brain would immediately start spinning out. It would think, I can't believe it. I just blew the whole day. What a waste of time. You should have known traffic was going to be bad. It's a Tuesday. Now everything's off. What's the point of even making these plans if you can't even stick to them? I mean, I can laugh at this now because it's 7 minutes and my brain really had some thoughts about it. But I kid you not, at the time, it really seemed like the entire day was a wash, that I truly had wasted the whole day. It was such extreme all or nothing thinking, right? Already I was convinced that I'd failed, and now I had to just dig myself out of this huge emotional hole before I could even get started. It wasn't just a quote unquote late start. It was a late start on top of this very fragile sense of always being behind. And in that moment, it didn't just seem like the plan was a little bit off track. It felt like I was off track and kept falling further away from the track. I'd already lost control of the whole day. And worse, I would make that mean something about me. And if your brain works anything like mine, it probably goes into spirals like mine did. Here we go again. Why even bother now? This always happens. I'm so bad at this. Why can't I just get my act together? We fall into that all or nothing spiral so fast, again, especially with time and routines and habits. And I think we do this because for so many of us, these plans, they're not just simply tasks on a list. We've made them so much more than that. We've loaded them up with a whole bunch of pressure. We have them represent our attempt at creating some semblance of control in our lives. We just have so much meaning wrapped up in these tasks written on a piece of paper. And that's what I really want to dive into today, where this mindset comes from and why it seems to hit so hard when things don't go exactly as planned. And of course, we'll talk about a very actionable way to help build a different relationship with the plan, with our schedule, and most importantly, with ourselves. So let's start by talking about what our brains think is really at stake when we fall into that all or nothing mindset around time. You know, when we miss the start of our plan or we don't follow it perfectly, as I mentioned, it often goes quite a bit deeper than just time management. for so many of us, not following that plan as we initially allotted seems like a reflection of who we are. It's one more piece of evidence that we're not doing enough or that we'll never get it together. I hear these thoughts so often from clients. They're the stories that I used to tell myself all the time. It sounds like, I don't know, everyone else seems to manage their time just fine. What's wrong with me? Why can't I get my act together? I was finally doing it, quote unquote, right, and now I ruined it. Why do I even bother? And what's more, while we may not consciously think these next exact words, I do want to offer as well that there's usually an underlying story or stories that shape these strong emotions, these big reactions. The narrative often underneath sounds something like, well, if I don't do it perfectly, it means there's something wrong with me. It means I'm not capable, I'm not reliable. It means I don't deserve respect or the understanding of others. If I can't get my own act together, how can I possibly expect someone to show up for me in the same way? And when this emotional weight gets too heavy, our brains often flip the switch from I'm trying to figure it out to what is the point? I'm done. Not because we don't care, not because we're lazy, but because of the shame that we're experiencing, of believing that we're wrong. That shame of imperfection feels too intense, and it often feels safer for the brain to stop, to just tell ourselves, I'm not even going to bother anymore, than to risk, quote unquote, failing again and having to experience that process of beating ourselves up again. And this spiral, this all or nothing thinking of I have to do it perfectly or not at all, hits especially hard for ADHD brains because of a few key traits that tend to really amplify this pressure. So let's talk about some of these traits, starting with the ADHD brain and our struggle with time. It is no secret that most of us, not all of us, but many of us really have difficulty with sensing and understanding time, period, right? But especially the passage of time, how long something takes, when time is passing, how much time is left. So when we think to ourselves, oh my gosh, I'm 7 minutes late starting this plan, or I can't believe I just wasted 30 minutes down the rabbit hole after lunch, our brain doesn't actually register those 7 minutes, those 30 minutes as a smaller segment within many hours of the day. Instead, it can seem like the whole window of time is destroyed or the whole day is essentially gone. It's this total distortion of time that in the moment seems so accurate and real. And then we add to that our perfectionism, which again, many of us ADHDers navigate. And if you're like me, you probably have used as a coping strategy for years before you knew about your diagnosis. Again, that's what it was for me. I relied on perfectionism all the time before I had my diagnosis because that's what I needed to do to make sure I didn't miss anything. So we try and get everything, quote unquote, just right to overcompensate for the times when things don't go just right. So when the plan even goes slightly off, it doesn't just seem like a minor disruption or a blip. Instead, we take it as this incredible failure, yet another example of us not having things perfectly together. And then, again, for many of us, we throw in a little bit of rejection sensitivity for fun, and we have that intense fear of disappointing others or being seen as unreliable. And now it's not just, oh man, I'm behind, but it's also people are going to think I can't handle anything. There I go, representing myself as a flake again, just like everyone thinks. And then underlying much of this is the ADHD brain's struggle with cognitive flexibility. So this is one of the executive functions our brain uses to help us shift gears, to see multiple perspectives, to adjust to new information or unexpected changes in plan. Okay, so it's our ability to say, oh, this didn't go as planned. How do we want to adjust? What else is possible? For many ADHD brains, that kind of flexible thinking doesn't always come super easily. We're not always super flexible in that flexible thinking, especially in the moments when our emotions are high, when shame is creeping in. So instead of seeing, oh, the plan is a little bit off, but we can adjust, the brain tends to jump to, well, the plan is ruined. Now the whole day is ruined. And again, your brain might not be as extreme as mine was, but that is how my brain thought all the time. And it's so easy to lose sight of the nuance. Everything becomes black or white, success or failure, all or nothing. So when you think about our often tense relationship with time and our pressures of perfectionism and that fear of judgment and the struggles with cognitive flexibility, you really do get this kind of perfect storm for the all or nothing thinking around planning. So if this resonates with you, if you have also been caught in some of these spirals like I'm talking about, it makes complete sense. There are so many reasons why our brains in particular slip into these patterns more often. Now, the good news is that this is a pattern we can start to shift, and we're going to talk about how to do that in just a moment. But first, I want to talk a little bit about what actually happens after we go off this said track. What tends to happen if we're not kind of coaching our brains about it when the plans don't go as we initially thought they would? Often a lot of things happen, okay? For some of us, the reaction is to go into some flavor of shutdown. So we buffer with something familiar, something that can fuel our dopamine, something like scrolling our phones or shopping online or disappearing into some video game or something. That might be one thing that happens. For others, it might be a procrasti-work situation where you keep busy with something else. For myself, it was trying to quote unquote fix the situation by remaking my plan over and over. I mean, I would do this all the time. I swear I would spend more energy rewriting my schedule than ever trying to follow the schedule. And as I look back, I was doing it to try and create some semblance of control when I felt like I didn't have any. And then the other scenario where I tend to see this come up is akin to us essentially kind of throwing our papers in the air or throwing our hands in the air and having that, I'm done with this energy, right? We tell ourselves, forget this, or some other version of that. I just do better when I wing it anyway. Why even bother? And we try and pretend we didn't care about it that much in the first place. Who even cares? I don't even care anymore. But deep down, if we're really honest with ourselves, we probably do care. Otherwise, we wouldn't be feeling so dysregulated in the first place when we initially went off that plan. The truth is, a lot of us make that plan with a sense of hope. We make that plan to try and help ourselves, to give ourselves that semblance of structure to do the things we want to do. So when that plan shifts, or when we need to adjust, even if it's just a couple of minutes, and the all or nothing thinking sneaks in, it can hurt. I've heard from so many ADHD brains who say it feels like they're letting themselves down when they don't stick to their plan. And I don't know about you, but for me, that thought, oh, I've let myself down again, it brings on so many different emotions. It brings shame and frustration and annoyance and helplessness and this desperate kind of urgent feeling that I have to fix everything before everything else falls apart. It's not just that the plan got derailed, it's that our brain is now telling us that we've failed, that we can't trust ourselves. And that story, the one that says we blew it again, that's the one that usually sends us into that full-on shame spiral. This is the one where the all or nothing mindset just really digs in, because once that spiral starts, we tend to believe that the only way to feel better is to have some sort of perfect restart. And so we think, I can't even. I'm going to restart tomorrow. Or I'll restart on Monday or next month or with the new planner or the next version of myself when I finally get it right. But here's the truth. You don't need a perfect restart. We don't need to fix anything. You're not broken. Instead, what I want to offer today is a simple reset. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about next. How do we create a gentle reset? Because here's the truth that I come back to again and again, both for my clients and for myself. Plans, okay? Plans are just guesses. Sometimes they're educated guesses. Sometimes we're throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. But plans are guesses. They're best case scenarios. They're hopes that we write down on paper. And plans are meant to change. The goal isn't to follow a plan perfectly. It's to use the plan as a guide or a touch point to come back to as often as you need. In fact, I think the real skill is learning how to adjust. That's where the power is. It's not in perfection, it's in the pivot. I think it's Kendra Adachi from The Lazy Genius who talks about the importance of the pivot. I think she is absolutely right. She is spot on. There is so much power in our ability to pivot. And one of the simplest ways that I've found to support that pivot, to support that small shift, is with something that I call the next 5 reset or the next 10 reset. Okay, so here's how this works. Let's say you realized that you've gone off track. Maybe you were doom scrolling after lunch, or you got an email from your boss that took a lot longer to respond. Maybe you hit traffic on the way into work and you're behind on what you initially mapped out for the day. Whatever it is that you have going on for you, and your brain is thinking some version of, ugh, the plan is ruined, the day is ruined, I did it again, why even bother? The next time you notice that happening, instead of trying to reclaim the entire day or needing to rewrite the whole plan or readjust everything, I invite you to instead pause and look at the clock. And then pick the next 5 or 10 minute mark on the clock. If it's 3:36, we reset at 3:40. If it's 4:01, we reset at 4:05. If it's super close, if it's 1:59 or something, maybe you jump ahead to 2:05. Give yourself a few more minutes, okay? Give yourself that small reset, that space that you need. That's it. This is the next 5 or the next 10 reset. By giving yourself this little bit of space, you're allowing your brain the gift of both a clear next starting point at 3:05 or at 4:10, and a little bit of white space to actually feel your feelings. Whether that means you need to sit down and dramatically sigh out loud and feel that frustration that the plan didn't go as you wanted, or letting that toddler part of your brain throw a tantrum that somebody came in and interrupted you and threw off your flow and it's really annoying, and you feel through that, and you're going to get started again at 12:20. Okay? Let yourself feel those feelings. Make sense why you feel them. Give yourself space to process the emotion, whether it's disappointment or frustration or annoyance, whatever it is. And then, when the clock hits the reset mark, we begin again. Not with a brand new plan, not with a big, fresh restart. Instead, from the next step, from that little reset. Now, I know this seems so small, but I've found that using this kind of check-in, this next 5 reset or next 10 reset, I've found it to be an external anchor that helps me feel incredibly sturdy and grounded. Because it helps me remind my brain, hey, the day isn't ruined. We're not behind. Every minute is a fresh start. I've got you. We don't need a perfect plan. We just need a path that we can get back on. Getting off track, that's part of the track. That's just going to happen. We just got off for a rest stop. We're getting right back on. And if your brain is spinning in the old story of, ugh, I blew it, I did it again, try offering gently, I don't know, maybe, but maybe we just need a reset. That's all. What if we started again at 4:40 or at 1:30? And remind yourself, this isn't a failure. This is just feedback. I'm learning how to reset. That's a new skill. Nothing's gone wrong here. Plans are flexible. I'm allowed to adapt. These tiny shifts matter. And this is how we change our story with following a plan. So if you're listening to this in real time, I invite you to look at the clock. What is your next 5 reset or your next 10 reset? Pick that moment. Let it hold space for your humanity, for your current emotions, and your pivot back. And when the clock hits that mark, begin again. That's the shift. Again, we're not aiming for some perfect day. We're practicing the art of starting again. So, the next time your brain tries to tell you the day is ruined, pause. Take a breath, look at the clock, and remember, you can reset at the next 5 or 10 minute mark. Not because you have to get back on track, but because you can if you want to. You get to keep showing up with flexibility because that's how we do things. We don't have to show up with shame. We can show up with choice. This is the skill. This is the work. When we keep showing up for ourselves with self-compassion and flexibility. I am telling you, this is the work, and it is so powerful. And if this episode resonated with you today, would you be a rock star and share it with a friend or someone who could also use the reminder? Or if you're listening to this on a podcast player like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, would you consider leaving a positive review? Or if you're on YouTube, maybe hit subscribe or leave a comment below. Whatever you do, please know that I so appreciate you for tuning in and listening and for helping me get these strategies to even more busy, awesome brains who need them. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you are ready to take these concepts and apply them to your life, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that's best for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes where you can learn more about how we can work together both in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, or in one-on-one coaching. You can learn more at I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/coaching. Also, if you want to learn my simple step-by-step approach to lock in a routine and make it stick, be sure to check out my free course. It's called the ADHD Routine Revamp. You can tap through the link in the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/routine to sign up. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.